So let's start. Let's start with an overview of the Gulf countries. Oman, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, and Iran are all countries on the coast of the Persian Gulf. Shad al-Arab, a river coming from Tigris and Euphrates, flows into the Persian Gulf. These countries are very interested in receiving agricultural produce because the climate in the region is rather tough, and agriculture is a challenging activity in the region. However, the geographical position of the countries enables them to be actively involved in maritime trade. The Arab states formed an organization which is called Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf. When we say the Gulf, we mean the Persian Gulf. However, we almost never use that word Persian. Usually in the Arab countries themselves, the word that applies to this reservoir is Arab Gulf. It is a regional international organization. It is established in 1981, and the main objective of the GCC is to coordinate and to ensure coordination and integration between the member states along economic, social, and cultural lines of work. The agreement that establishes the organization promotes scientific and technological progress in industry, agriculture, and preservation of water resources. And on the basis of the economic agreement, the tariff barriers between the 6 member states that form the GCC were lifted, and the peoples of the Gulf are now open and free in setting up production and contracting in any of the member states, and they enjoy the same rights as residents. The Gulf Cooperation Council consists of Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. The negotiations to join GCC are held with Yemen since 2005. Iraq is not a member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, but Jordan and Morocco received invitations to join GCC. There are certain political aspects that today did not allow us to invite all members of the GCC to the webinar, but Kuwait can be used as a role model. It can be a good example, and we can learn from Kuwait about the requirements that this state sets to exported goods, and tomorrow we will hear a presentation from Saudi Arabia. It should be noted that in addition to the export of products, agricultural products, feed additives, and veterinary medicine products are also exported from Russia to the GCC. In the United Arab Emirates, there is an annual agricultural fair. This year, it should have, well, in March, the Milk Olympic Games or the Dairy Olympic Games should have taken place. And we were already in the process of registering for the event when the pandemic prevented us from going there. The main document that we follow when preparing the export documents for the GCC is the GCC Guide for Control on Imported Foods. We'd like to thank Mr. Al-Rashidi for sharing this document with us, and the translation into Russian will be published at the Rossельхоз website. So as soon as the translation is finalized, well, today you can use the English version, but as soon as the translation is finalized, we will share it with all the participants of the webinar and we'll publish it as well on the Rossельхознадзor website. This guide contains all the requirements, all the standards that the countries present to the imported agricultural products. Today, during our workshop, Faisal Al-Rashidi will be the representative for the GCC. Mr. Al-Rashidi works for the Food Import Department at the Public Authority for Food and Nutrition in Kuwait. Kuwait is an amazing country. The country dates back to the year 1600. The country is rich in history. It has been developing very actively for years, for centuries. However, in 1990 and 1991, Kuwait was occupied by the troops of Saddam Hussein, and it was almost fully destroyed. Little infrastructure was left, and the country basically had to start from scratch. In 2018, GDP per capita exceeded $65,000. In Kuwait, gasoline is cheaper than drinking water because we know that the states of the Gulf are rich in oil, and Kuwait is responsible for more than 9% of the total oil production in the world. Utilities are paid for by the government. Education is free in the country, and there is a special program that supports the most talented students. The government is willing to pay for their studies abroad. The country has free of charge medicine, and if the local healthcare system cannot help a Kuwaiti, then the citizens of Kuwait can receive subsidies for healthcare services abroad. There is unemployment in the country. Because there is unemployment in every country, but the unemployment benefit is $800. The residents of Kuwait retire at the age of 55 if they are men, and at the age of 50 if they are women. And when oil becomes cheaper, it becomes more expensive in the international market, often loans of the local residents are written off. I looked into the history of Kuwait. I was absolutely impressed by the progress that the country has made over the centuries, by the fast development. We know that Kuwait also helps poor countries. In particular, Kuwait helped many other countries during the current pandemic. They supplied food and other resources and financial support. So it is a real pleasure for me to give the floor now to Faisal Al-Rashidi. Mr. Al-Rashidi kindly agreed to speak at this workshop. Mr. Al-Rashidi also had to rework the presentation. He agreed to participate in the tests for the connection for the workshop. So, and we obviously we have to speak to English in English to each other, although English is not our native language, neither for Faisal nor for us. Faisal is the head of the department for food import, and he's a lecturer also at the state body for applied education since 2016. He is a founding member of the Kuwaiti Association of Food and Nutrition. I'm very glad, and I hope that today's workshop will pave the way to more cooperation between our countries. And now I give the floor to Mr. Al-Rashidi.
Good morning, everyone. Uh, First of all, my name is Faisal Al-Rashidi. I am I am the head of Sea and Air Borders Department. I worked in this department almost for 12 years. My voice is okay?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
everything's fine.
Okay. And I've been working in this food import department for almost 12 years. Before I begin, I really would like to thank the coordinators, Ms. Svetlana and her group for organizing this seminar and to give us the opportunity to share our procedure, our work in Kuwait, and how do we deal with the import food shipments that come to Kuwait. So thank you for this organization. And I hope at the end to get the benefit out of this presentation. In this lecture, what I am trying to explain or deliver to you is how do we deal with the import shipment that come to Kuwait? What standard do we implement? What's the most mistake in the certificate? What's our requirement in the certificate? So I really want to give you an overview of how do we deal with the shipment. So the exporter in Russia, they know how Kuwait deal with these food shipment that comes to Kuwait. And what our inspectors in the border will deal with these shipments. And this, I hope it's gonna be helpful to not uh, stop any shipment that come from Russia. First of all, I'll just explain about the Food Regulatory Authority in Kuwait. Our authority is the Public Authority for Food and Nutrition. Kuwait government in 2013 established Public Authority for Food and Nutrition. You know, because before 2013, too many food-related departments used to be in different ministry. But after establishing the BaFin, Public Authority for Food and Nutrition, now all food-related departments became under the umbrella of the BaFin, the Public Authority for Food and Nutrition. And what's the main responsibility for our authority is to control the food in Kuwait. I mean local food and the imported food. And which department is responsible about the imported food is Food Import Department, where I am working in. And as I said, the authority is responsible to make sure that all food business, trading, imported food, local food are fit for human consumption. Food Imports Department responsibility. I can conclude our responsibility in my Food Imports Department, two main points. One is to make sure that the food that comes to Kuwait are fit for human consumption and comply with the standard. And also, our main responsibility is to facilitate this trading between Kuwait and other countries, between Kuwait and Russia, to make the procedure is faster. And this is for sure will help the exporter and importer to reduce the time of consuming the food shipments and reducing the cost, you know, because if any delay of the shipment happen in the border, this will cost too many time for the importers. What I'm trying to explain here is what the regulation that control our work here in the food imports department. Mainly 4 points. This is very important. One of them is the GCC standard. We, we in Kuwait, we follow the GCC standards, which is issued by the GCC standard organization. This standard organization for the member state of the Gulf Cooperation Council and Yemen. In this organization, Yemen with us with doing these standards. This is what control our work, the GSO standard. The second one is the GCC guide for control on imported foods. And this guide is like and guidelines for the GCC country to use to explain how to deal, what's the procedure in the border, what's the shape of the certificate, even health certificate or slaughter certificate. This guidelines to make as much as we can the procedure the same. So once the shipment comes to any of the GCC country, we should deal with it at the same time. This GCC guideline is explaining the procedure on controlling on the imported food. Also, what control our job in the food import department is food import regulation in Kuwait. And this regulation established in 2017. I don't know if you have a copy, but I'll try to send it to the coordination if they can send it to you. These food import regulation will show the inspectors how to deal with the shipment, what's the documents requirement for any food shipments, and how to check what's the documentation requirements and how to deal with the shipment and taking sample to the lab. Everything in the food imports regulation than in Kuwait. Also, what control our work in the food imports department is the local circulars that comes from technical committee or the Supreme Committee for Food Safety. For example, if any outbreak happen in certain country, the Supreme Committee will meet and will make a ban on this certain country. And even if the outbreak is finished, this Supreme Committee will make the left on this country. Also, if we have an issue for example, for any of the standard with any shipment, and the importer have an issue with their shipment, they can send a letter to the technical committee, and the technical committee will do a local official circular for us, then we deal with it. So one of our main sources of dealing with the shipment is the local official circulars. Also, the all standard based on scientific evidence, such as OIE recommendations or Codex standard. This also control our work in the food department. So now you have an overview about what control our work. We shouldn't go out of these regulations. In this slide, the requirement documents that is mentioned in Kuwait, food import regulations in Kuwait, the one I just explained, 19/17, and even in the GCC guidelines. This requirement is that is required for any of the imported food shipments. I think what concern for you is the one I said, country of origin, like the packing list, the health certificate, the halal slaughter certificate, and so on. These I will explain in the next slide exactly what do we want exactly from these requirements. This is an example of a document that we want. Like the backing list. This is very important, backing list, because this is the backing list we can compare between the product and the paper and the documents. One of the main, I guess, requirement for us is the health certificate. Every shipment that comes to Kuwait must have the health certificate. What is the health certificate as it's described in the food import regulations in Kuwait and the GCC guidelines is official paper, imply that the food is safe for human consumption and fit with the standard. What's requirement for this certificate is it must be original copy. The health certificate, it must be original copy. And after Corona, we accept electronic copy, but the component authority must give us a way to verify this certificate. Also, it must be issued by the component authority of the country of origin. In Russia, it must be authorized from the Federal Service for Veterinary and Phytosanitary Surveillance. This is an example of a chickpeas certificate that arrived to Kuwait. Also, the health certificate, to describe it easily, it has two main parts. One, to describe all the goods, the weight, the content, and the labeling. The second part is the health attestation. So the health attestation must be mentioned clearly that the food in this shipment fit for human consumption and comply with the standard. Here, if I say standard, it must be GSO standard or Codex or even the Russian standard, which is equivalent to our standard, GCC standard. Here, an example of health certificate that we agreed, health certificate agreed by PAFN, our authority, and Russian Federal Service of Veterinary and Phytosanitary Surveillance. If I can remember, a group of experts from Russia, they came to visit us in Kuwait, and we had a great long meeting. And we did this in one meeting. We did all these health attestation. As you see, this health attestation, lots of health attestation. I know it's not clear, small letter, but we try to put everything related to animal disease in this certificate. So any meat and meat product shipment will comply with everything because of this health attestation. For example, we mentioned a health attestation about FMD disease. We tried to make sure that the meat or meat product derived from animals originated from free from foot and mouth disease. And also we mentioned a clarification about BSE disease in this certificate. So this certificate, we had agreed between us and Russian Federation. So all the meat and meat shipment must come with this certificate. It's not important that the shape of this certificate, but the most important, the content of this certificate. Also, one of the important requirements for our food shipment, I mean the shipment that meat and meat product shipment, is the Halal Slaughtering Certificate. The Halal Slaughtering Certificate issued in the country of origin by Islamic agency, accredited by Kuwait. When I say accredited by Kuwait, I mean they must follow, when they issued this certificate, they must follow the GSO 2055/2, and it must be original copy, attesting that the animal has been slaughtered according with the rule of Islamic Sharia, according to the GSO 993. So in Halal Slaughter Certificate, there is two main GSO standards. First, the GSO 2055/2, then the GSO 993. These GSO standards will explain how to make the certificate and how to slaughter the animal according to Islamic Sharia. In this slide, the Halal certificate. What's the difference between the Halal Slaughtering Certificate and Halal Certificate? The Halal Certificate is a certificate issued by the country of origin or country of exportation. Sometimes the raw materials come from different countries. So the halal must be from the main from origin country or from a country of exportation. By an Islamic, it must be issued by an Islamic agency accredited by Kuwait. It must be original copy and attesting as well the products such as meat, fat, gelatin has been prepared and produced according with Islamic Sharia, or the food which contains animal product or byproduct is halal. This is the halal. This is the halal certificate. Sometimes a product, for example, like sweet, it has gelatin on it, on their ingredients. And this gelatin from animal origin, it must be has with this shipment clarification, which is halal certificate, that this gelatin is halal. This is an example. This is an example of the halal slaughtering certificate for exporting meat and meat countries to the GCC countries. This is, you can find it in the GCC guidelines. And this, an example of the halal certificate. The first one, sorry, if I can go back. This is the Halal Slaughtering Certificate, and this Halal Certificate. This is an example. You can find it in the guidelines, in the GCC guidelines for controlling the food. Now, this is one of the question from your experts. What's the common mistake in the health certificate? I think it's very important question, and I tried to collect what the mistake we receive during dealing with all food import shipment, and what the inspectors, our inspector in the border, explain to us or deliver to us the mistakes. But I'll just, before I go to the common mistake, I just want to clarify about the Halal Slaughter Certificate Agency, because I mentioned that the Halal Slaughter Certificate Agency, it must be accredited by Kuwait. We don't have still list of halal accreditation slaughterhouse, but at the moment we accept the certificate that stamped by the Embassy of Kuwait, and we looked to any accreditation in the GCC country. If it's accredited, we accept it. That's how we accredited any Islamic agency to make a halal slaughter certificate. Okay. Now the common mistake of the health certificate. Depending on our records of the following mistake, it's repeated in the health certificate. One is that not all details of the imported goods are covered. Sometimes in the health certificate, they don't want put any details of the imported food details like weight, number of packaging, invoice, as it's explained previously. So this will delay the shipment from releasing it to the border. Our inspector in the border, if they found this mistake, they will ask the importer here in Kuwait to give them the details or the paper to make the release of the shipment. Also, one of the common mistakes is the difference between the data in the health certificate and the goods in the backing list. Sometimes we receive health certificate, it has description of goods that in the shipment, and when we check the backing list, it's different. So this is non-comfortable for the inspector. So they will hold the shipment in the border until you clarify the mistake. Also, the certificate is not issued from official recognized body. Like, for example, in Russia, the certificate comes from authority that are not federal service, the Russian federal service. We don't accept it. Also, one of the common mistakes, the required health certificate being dated before the production date. It's not like logical that the certificate issued before the production. This is one of the mistakes that will delay the shipment. Also, one of the common mistakes is that the health certificate being issued after the date of the shipment. So when the shipment just moved out of Russia, then the health certificate being issued. Here, I'm not talking about Russia, an example. but I'm talking the common mistake that come from different countries. Also, one of the mistakes we receive in the health certificate is the lack of specific health attestation by OIE based on the country status. Here, like based on the country outbreak, we have to have certain health attestation. Like if any of like for example, if certain country have FMD outbreak, we must have the health attestation that mentioned in the OIE articles. And also, if any outbreak happen, for example, in certain country that happen in for influenza, we have to have that in this shipment a health attestation clearly mentioned that is being treated by, you know, above 70 degrees heat. To avoid this mistake in this certificate and detention of any consignment, send the certificate sample through our official channels. So what I'm trying to explain here is you can contact us through our official channel, send us the certificate, send us an example of labeling of the sample, and we can reply to you and give you any comments, and then we give you the approval. Then you make sure that there is no delay of releasing the shipment on our borders, as we did with the federal service in Russia. We agreed this with this certificate, so everything comes with this certificate is accepted for Kuwait. Also, the common mistake in halal certificate, first, the slaughter date is in month and year format, which is not acceptable in Kuwait. This is very important. In Kuwait, we have to have the slaughter date in a day, month, year. This is based on the Food Import Regulation 19/2017 that I mentioned previously. The slaughter dates must be in a day, month, year format. Also, one of the common mistake is the difference between data in the it must be halal certificate and the goods in the backing list. This mistake, it comes with the health certificate, halal certificate, even the halal slaughter certificate. Also, one of the common mistake in the halal slaughter certificate that the production date on the goods is before the slaughter date in the certification. This will make rejection for the shipment and it making delay of the food goods that came to Kuwait to go to the market. Also, one of the common mistakes in halal slaughter certificate is not stamped from Kuwait embassy. So that's what I mentioned previously, as we don't have yet the list of approved halal agency, we have, or we must have the stamp of the embassy of Kuwait. So sometimes the halal slaughter come to Kuwait and the shipment arrive to Kuwait and we don't have this stamping. This is absolutely will make the shipments hold in the custom area, which like lots of money cost the importers. But this is one of the common mistake, important common mistake. Also, one of the common mistake in the halal slaughter certificate is the food production date being before date of the halal slaughter certificate. And this is quite often comes this mistake. And before I move to the next slide, I just want to add one more point. Sometimes the production dates, we start accounting the date of expiration from the slaughter date, not a production date. For example, for any beef and beef products, the expiration date is 120 days. But this 120 days start from the slaughter date, not production date. So sometimes the shipment comes, it's one more day, or 2 more day extra. And this is not acceptable. And this will delay the shipment. Now, the pesticide and antibiotics residues in foodstuff. The pesticide residues detection in agricultural products and the antibiotic residues in meat and poultry is one of the basic routine examination in Kuwait. After establishing the Authority for Food and Nutrition, we did a program to make sure to focus on the pesticide testing. And we had lots of trouble with some countries with the high limits of residues of pesticide. Then we stopped, then we asked for more certification from this country or from these different countries. So Kuwait adopt GSO and Codex maximum residues limits for pesticide and extraneous maximum residues limits. What do we implement here for the pesticide test? This is based on our lab, is the GSO 5DS 382/2013 and GSO 383/2013, the maximum limits of pesticide residues in agricultural and food products. This is an example of the pesticide certification that came from, for example, from Egypt. This is mentioned clearly that this shipment is clear from the pesticide residues or with the limit. And here they mention it's according to EU maximum residues limit, which must be equivalent to the GSO standard that I mentioned. Also, this is, I guess, from Lebanon, these kind of certification for phytosanitary certification that mentioning the pesticide residues limits. The GSO standard. Here in the border, our inspectors, when the food import department, when the food import shipment received to Kuwait, our inspector, first of all, they will look to the paper, the document. Then they will comply this document with this shipment. Then they will check the product itself. When they do this, they follow up the GSO standard specification. First of all, they will check the specific product standard. For example, if you have any of kind of a sweet received to Kuwait, they will check the standard, whether the ingredients mentioned in the label is allowed to be added in this certain product. Also, our inspector on the border applied the GSO 9 2013, which is the labeling of a pre-packaged food stuff. This is very important GSO standard. This is talking about how to make the label of any food product. So our inspector in the border, they will check based on this standard. And this standard, the labeling must be in Arabic or English, beside with the native language. Also, the GSO 2500 additive permit for use in foodstuff. Also, our inspector will implement the GSO 2233/2013, which is the requirement of nutritional labeling, which is must be there in the food labeling. As I mentioned, you know, in the previous slide, what control our work is the standard and also the local official circulars. One of the local official circulars, they give, for example, this standard, making the importer and the exporter or the producer must mention the labeling in Arabic. We have lots of problem with the importer and exporter with this labeling, with nutritional labeling. Then our technical committee give more time to the importer to manage this with the exporter to deal with this, and we give more time until end of the last May. But with this Corona pandemic, we give more time. So if the labeling of a nutritional fact not in Arabic, now we give permission until the importer deal with the exporter to manage this labeling. All the GCC standard of the additives permits, this is an example. You can get all the GCC standard from this link, from their organization online. You can take it in either Arabic or English language. You can find all the GSO standard that I mentioned in previous slides. To avoid, you know, stopping shipment in the border, where a consignment of food is found to be non-compliant with GCC requirement, the component authority, which is us, represented by our inspector in the border, will make reserve notification in this shipment, because it's not comply with, you know, any of the standard or certain standard. Just to make sure that our inspector, they will check standard. Then for each shipment, we take sample for the products and we send it to our lab. Our lab, they will check, they will do the test, microbiological test and chemical test, and also they will check the standard. If there is any color agents are added and it's not allowed, they will check with that. So situation where assignment will be signed, the absence of the content, the list of contents. These certain situation that probably the inspector will make reservation of this shipment in the custom area. The food items doesn't comply with the certificate, with those consignment, like the goods or the food items in the shipment, it's not the same the one described in the certificate. Also, the absence of original copy. The requirement also, the required health certificate being dated before the production date, as I mentioned previously. The health certificate being issued after the date of shipment. The food production date being before date of the halal slaughter certificate. These, the common mistake I just mentioned, this will lead to reserve notification for the shipment and holding it in the custom area. Also, the absence of the original copy of halal slaughter certificate. This is very important. If the halal slaughter certificate or the halal certificate, it's not with the shipment, or if it has any mistake, we will not let the shipment goes to the market. And this is not quite comfortable for the importer. And probably they will contact you, the exporter, to give them the right documentation. The labeling and of pre-packaged. Food inspector in our import borders are responsible to check the labeling. And as I mentioned, it must be complied with the GSO 9/2013. This is very important standard. And also, one of the main mistake comes with the labeling. It comes with no Arabic. And this is one of your expert question, whether who is responsible about translating the labeling. I guess based on this GSO standard is the producer. They must translate it in Arabic or in English, but it must be in Arabic. But when it comes with in Russian language, it's quite difficult. We have to ask letter from the exporter to explain, and this to explain what's the Russian language on the labeling. But it must be in Arabic, maybe alongside with any other language, Arabic and Russian language. Clearly, the labeling exposed product name, production, expiry dates, ingredients, country of origin. It must be complied with the GSO 9/2013. Checking allowed food additives and making sure it complies with the GSO standard 2500 additives permit for use in the food. This is very important also, GSO standard, because we have lots of problem when the lab, we take samples from products and take them to the lab. The lab will find, a color agency or any additive items, and it's not mentioned in the labeling. Or maybe there is items added and it's not allowed to be added in this certain product. So it's very important to check this standard. Checking the nutritional facts comply with the GSO 2233. This is very important for the requirement of nutritional labeling, which is compulsory, but we hold this for now, but it's going to be compulsory, I guess, after October of this year. A pre-importing inspection. As I mentioned, contacting us is very easy through the official channels. Please, we are happy to receive any question or any pre-check and inspection for any products you want to. We want us to give you the feedback of it. The Food Import Department offer importers and even exporters the pre-check of inspection products. Even the importer can come here to us in the department and we check the paper, we check the product, the labeling, the GSO standard for them, and we say this is okay, this is not. Kuwait food imports. Okay, this is one of the questions that expert ask us through the email. I guess Kuwait is very very more than like 90% of our food is food imported in Kuwait. So too many products come overseas, and we receive everything from overseas. So, but I guess mainly is the meat and meat product is one of the highest consumers probably in the world is Kuwait consumers, the meat and meat product, and also the agriculture. I guess because of the weather or the hardness of harvest making agricultural products, we receive lots of like more than 90% of our agriculture, even more product is from overseas. So this is, I guess, the main, and from Russia, when I checked our shipment or food products came from Russia, most of these products is the chickpeas and also chocolate and tea. This is most of the products came from Russia. But we in Kuwait, I guess the markets in Kuwait can accept all kind of products. I know the time is running. Please, if you have further information and inquiries about about anything, please just email us through our official channels through the Department of External Relationship and Organization. At the end, I really would like to thank the coordination, Ms. Svetlana and her group for this organization. And I wish I could explain what's Kuwait regulation and procedure on controlling in controlling the food. So I wish even this seminar can continue with us for the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. All right. So, colleagues, now let's see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat, at least. Oh, no, I do see something. Okay, let me, I think that this is the question that we will leave until the end. This is a question about cats and dogs and how cats and dogs can be brought into the country. Okay, are there any other questions? Well, I'll give you time to think about it, but I have received questions through email and personal communication with some of our regional offices before this workshop, and there are questions about Kuwait legislation. There are 68 Russian companies that received a permit to export to Kuwait. The list of those companies, 68 companies, can be found at Rossельхознадзор website. The question is, does Kuwait run checks on every potential exporter, or are these checks performed by the Russian authority?
What I understand from the question is, do we check all the shipment of food that comes to Kuwait? Yes.
Not shipments, the companies themselves. No, the companies, the exporters.
Okay. The exporter. No, we have agreed not for the certain time, but we have agreed between the federal Russian service that they have this certificate we accept between each other. So the federal service they our representative in Russia to check this company for this certain time.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Следующий вопрос. Во всех ли случаях поставок мясной
Another question. Meat products. The Halal Certificate. Is this a mandatory document, or is it an optional document to be presented for meat products? Every shipment should come, if it's a shipment of meat products, it should come with a Halal certificate?
Yes, this is one of the most important documents for us, that the Halal slaughter certificate. It must be come with all shipment that come to Kuwait with, I mean, meat and meat shipment. This is based on the GSO standard, based on the Food Import Regulation 19/2017. And as I mentioned, must be original copy and stamped from the Kuwait embassy.
Хорошо, спасибо. Следующий вопрос.
Very well, thank you. Another question.
Лабораторных испытаний мяса охлажденной баранины, предназначенного для экспорта.
Chilled lamb meat. How often are laboratory tests done?
With the lab, because we have dealing with the lab to finish the result earlier for the short expiration.
Мясо в лаборатории.
For the short expiration. So I think maximum 2 or 3 days, I guess. This is maximum. But I'll make sure that the
could you please repeat the answer? So it's 2 or 3 days?
Yeah, 2-3 days, but the shipment will not be in the border. Once the all document is okay, we take sample and we tell the companies to put this products in their store and waiting for the result. And the result for the meat and meat products, for the fruit and vegetable, which is their expiration is short, we finish it quickly, but maximum 3 days, maximum, I guess. This is from what I see from the result.
А как часто нужно проводить исследования?
And how often are the tests done? Every time with every shipment?
Yes. We do for test for all shipments. We planning, to make a based risk assessment management system in the future. So not all the shipment will be tested. It's based on their high risk of the product. In the future, we will, I guess, implement this. So, for example, if we have a product from Russia and we tested, and the result comes okay, then the few shipments will not be tested, will be released directly based on the previous lab test. This is in the future, but for the meantime, we do test all the shipment, and I guess it doesn't take lots of time, but sometimes, we have high season, that products come to Kuwait very high, which is before Ramadan. Each year before Ramadan, lots of products come to Kuwait, and this probably will delay the shipment. But our lab will, like in these high season, they work overtime to finish quickly. So I guess will not exceed more than 1 week, maybe.
Я поняла, спасибо. Мой вопрос...
Okay, thank you. Another question. One of my fields of interest is antibiotic resistance. I do research in the field. Do you know anything about the equipment and the techniques, the methods that Kuwait uses to identify the traces, the residue of pesticides and antibiotics in the products?
And
what's the
I
procedure?
guess, yeah, this is I think the lab department, they do this procedure. But I know they follow the GSO standard based on the pesticide and antibiotics limits. Even the codex, if it's not available in GSO, we follow the codex. And even the GSO standard, they have a standard explaining the procedure of doing this test. But it's a lab test. It's a lab test. Sorry, it's the lab. They will answer this question. I hope in the future, in the next seminar, you can arrange kind of this seminar, and you receive our colleagues from the lab. I'm sorry, I couldn't answer it.
Спасибо большое.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Translations. Translation into English and other languages. The veterinary certificates. Who should take care of the translation?
Veterinary certificate, I guess it's issued by the Federal Service for Veterinary. Yeah.
Probably again,
and phytosanitary.
It's not an easy question, but I don't know, maybe you know.
Yeah, no. You know, the veterinary certificate is from Russia. It's issued by the Federal Service for Veterinary and Phytosanitary Surveillance of the Russian Federation, and they are responsible to do the translation. And even if we have like Russian and English, Russian and Arabic, but I think this is the responsibility of the Russian Federation. And this is what I mentioned here. This is the certificate we agreed between us, which is Arabic and English. But it's fine for us if it's Russian and English, or Russian and Arabic. But this is, I guess, responsibility of the Russian Federation.
Хорошо, понятно, спасибо. Еще вопрос в чате.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question from the chat. Beef. Okay, what should the producer of beef do in terms of lab tests? It's a question that comes from the chat. The question is about beef producers, those who want to export to Kuwait, how often they should perform lab tests in their own country, at their own facilities, and what kind of tests they should be.
You know, I guess the test you do, it's based on your production. But for us, it's what dealing or what's the official channel between the producer and us is the Russian Federation. And when the Russian Federation in the certificate saying this product is fit for human consumption and comply with the standard, this means the producer, they do, I don't know the check if you mean every day or in any batch, every batch production. But we in Kuwait, in our lab, when we send the lamb to the lab, they will check the microbiological test. They will check the chemical, they will do the chemical test, and also they will do the GSO standard check. So about the antibiotics and etc. But what the how many tests you have to do in the lab, I guess this is in your factory is between you and the Russian Federation that we agreed that is representing the all food product or meat and meat product that comes to Kuwait.
Замечательно, спасибо.
But I'll just add
вопрос.
something if you excuse me. You know, we follow the ISO 20,000/2015. This ISO, I guess, it's based on the food safety and the HACCP program. I think this is the basic regulation that you must follow in the factory. The ISO 22,000, and you have to implement the HACCP. This is the minimum requirement, I guess, to be accepted with the federal Russian. So I guess the federal service of Russia, when they go inspect the company at the factory, I guess they will, for sure, they will check the ISO 20,000, which is whether if it's implementing in the factory or not. And they will for sure check the HACCP if it's implementing in this factory or not.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. So, okay, a question from the chat about cats and dogs. What are the veterinary requirements to bring in cats and dogs into the country if it's not the owners who are bringing them? If the cats and dogs are sent by cargo transport? And another question is about birds. It's about hawks. Just a second. And falcons, basically. So the first question is about cats and dogs, and the other is about hawks and falcons, if they are not brought into the country by their owners, if they travel with cargo.
The public authority for food and nutrition in Kuwait are responsible about the meat product only, but the live animals like cat and falcons is belong to the public authority for agriculture and fish, I guess, in Kuwait. So it's another authority. We are responsible about the meat and meat product, not live animals. So I'm sorry, I know nothing about this. And if you want, I can try to find the contact number, and I will send it to Miss Svetlana.
Спасибо большое.
Okay, thank you very much.
Еще один, думаю, последний вопрос, если
And one last question. I think it will be the last question unless we get another one right now. The question is,
Отвечаете ли вы за ввоз лекарственных препаратов, например,
the question is about pharmaceutical products, drugs, and also veterinary medical products like antibiotics. Again, what is the authority that is responsible for importation of drugs and pharmaceutical products? And another question, what are the requirements, or where can we find out about the requirements to participate in different fairs, trade shows, and similar activities?
Okay, we in Kuwait, we are the public authority for food and nutrition. The drugs sector is with the Ministry of Health. So we don't deal with the drugs. But as I said with the live animal, I'll try to find, if you want, the contact number for Ministry of Health, and I'll email it to Miss Civil. I'm sorry for the name. I wrote it.
Svetlana.
Svetlana. I'm sorry, Svetlana. I'm sorry. I wrote it in Arabic, you know, so to know the pronunciation. Sorry. I really apologize.
And what about trade shows and that kind of activities if we are importing samples or samples of grain or samples of products of animal origin to participate in a trade show or to negotiate with potential contractors in Kuwait? Then what are the requirements?
This is, we have an article in the food imports regulation 19/2017 article, I guess 16 or 17, talks about these certain products that imported for the exhibition. It must be not big shipment, that for a business it must be small samples. Second thing, it must be fit for human consumption, and just, I guess, a letter from the exporter to say that this is fit for human consumption and and is halal. Then we will not deal with it as a trading business shipment. This is what for the exhibition, but it must be like not more than probably 100, 150 kilogram, I guess, or it comes to 250, but you have to have a letter. What I mean letter is when you like deal with the importer here, just send them official letter from you that it's halal product, and we want this product for the exhibition only.
Let's resume our work. And our next speaker is Mr. Sonsky. He is the head of the Department of Border Veterinary and Phytosanitary Surveillance in Russia. And he will talk about the Russian perspective on Russian exports to the countries of the Gulf. And maybe some of the information will be repeated. I mean, some things that you have already heard will be repeated again. However, uh, practice makes perfect, and it's very important for us to communicate this information to the producers, to the companies who are planning or who are already exporting their products to the Gulf. Andrei will talk about the Russian perspective. Like I said, we don't have much of the cargo flow between Russia and Kuwait. However, there are other countries in the region, and we've gained some experience through our cooperation with those countries. Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, Mr. Al-Rashidi.
Экспортной сертификации стран Персидского залива, в частности, и
The certification of exports
вообще выглядит следующим образом.
to the Gulf and also to, well, other countries.
Экспорта
Certification of export in
любого
general
производителя подконтрольных товаров
means that
необходимо в первую очередь попасть,
the producer
пройти обследование на соответствие требованиям тех стран,
should be examined
отправка, и
for the producer's compliance with the requirements of the intended
Федерации
countries of export,
реестром
and the producer should
оперирует
be
после
included onto the register of
соответственно
the Russian Service for Veterinary and Phytosanitary Surveillance.
информационную систему ЦЕГЛа.
This can be done by applying online through a specialized portal. Then the application is verified and is either rejected or accepted. The application should be sent to the regional office of Россельхознадзор. Россельхознадзor conducts an inspection, and like I said, either the application is approved or it is rejected. I work in the border control department, and our department starts communicating with the producer after the producer was already included onto the register and is ready to send the cargo.
Исторически сложилось так, что большая часть отправляемой на экспорт продукции проходит через регион ответственности
You know that St. Petersburg
управления Роскоснадзора по
is a major Russian port.
областям. Значит, с продукцией большинства предприятий Российской Федерации, да, которые экспортируют,
So once again,
наши сотрудники сталкиваются тогда, когда она
usually Russian exporters have to deal with our department when their products come to the port of St. Petersburg, and
для документарного контроля комплект документов.
those producers, those exporters, they have to provide us with a certain set of documents.
Входит ветеринарно-сопроводительный документ,
Among the documents, we have various veterinary and phytosanitary certificates.
полномочного органа
These certificates
ветеринарии субъекта
have to be issued by an authorized
сопроводительные документы,
office in the relevant Russian region.
протокол лабораторных испытаний продукции,
Among the documents, there should be lab test results,
выполнение, наличие необходимых
and at our department,
исследований
we will check the documents, we will match the information in the documents.
и, конечно же,
We will also check the compliance of the data to the Russian standards,
Меркурий
and then we would use another information system that we call Mercury
производителя управляемой
in order to trace the origin of the product, because some products
веса до
have multiple ingredients, other products are produced out of livestock, for instance. So there is a system that enables us to trace
значит,
the product all the way to its original feedstock.
Мы принимаем только оформленный государственными ветеринарными врачами. Данный
We
работа
only accept
указана в регламенте осуществления
documents issued by government authorities,
граничного ветеринарного контроля. Данный регламент
such as customs authorities or veterinary service. There is a special regulation that is approved by the Ministry of Healthcare, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Customs Service. It's a joint regulation that again determines the list of required documents and the content of those documents. There is a state veterinary service that in every region has offices, has representative branches, and they are the ones that guarantee the safety and the quality of the product in respective Russian regions. As to the export to the countries of the Gulf, we don't handle much of such cargo, but there is this farm, one farm in the St. Petersburg region that has been very active in the Arab market. And we know from our data that just last year they shipped 345 batches of eggs to the United Arab Emirates. In 2020, obviously, the turnover of cargo went down because of the pandemic. Maybe there were other factors at play as well. We don't know yet, but we still see some deliveries of eggs to the United Arab Emirates in 2020. Vaccines, veterinary vaccines, another popular item. Poultry as well. There are shipments of poultry to that region. Again, the numbers may not look very impressive right now, but perhaps it's because it's because the statistics for our region, and there are other gateways to the world in Russia apart from St. Petersburg, and we think that more cargo could be going towards that region through other gateways. You know that Россельхознадзор, the Russian Service for Veterinary and Phytosanitary Surveillance, one of its functions is to promote trade between countries. Again, you can find information about our trade flows with different countries on Россельхознадзor website. We have just learned that the requirements in the countries of the Gulf are harmonized through the GSO standards, and you can find additional information about individual countries at the Россельхознадзor website. Right now, you're looking at a screenshot from the site. You can see here examples, samples of certificates. You can find out other relevant data. We too use this information as employees of Россельхознадзор. We refer to this data in our work. Our certificates, the health certificates, are filled out in English. Many of the members of the staff at Россельхознадзор speak English, and they are quite competent in filling out those certificates.
информационными системами.
We have multiple information systems.
Основными
At
критериями
our authority,
сертификации являются
and for export certification,
Меркурий.
we use Argus and Mercury.
В Меркурии, значит, соответственно, специалисты проверяют, прослеживают
Mercury
продукции
is an IT system for e-certification. It's the system that I have already presented. This is the one that enables us to trace the product from the port of St. Petersburg to the regional producer, all the way to livestock, all the way to different additives and ingredients. So we can see both the exporter and all the various producers that could have been involved in making that product. We also have the data on any go-betweens, any trade organizations that might have been between the producer and the exporter. So we can see the whole chain, and we can make sure this way that there were no substitutes on the way and that the products are really produced by the companies that were included onto the Россельхознадзор register by the authorized and supervised entities.
Это не касается стран Персидского залива, потому что
And speaking generally, not with as applied to GCC countries, but in general terms,
цепочка, которую нужно
there are some
она минимальна. То есть есть только
common mistakes and problems in the process. Obviously, if the producer deals directly with the customer, for us it is the easiest way. We see the farm and we see the, say, importer. But it's not always that simple.
нарушениями мы выявляли, что
And
цепочка прослеживаемости
during export and import
происходит
transactions,
на
sometimes we would encounter this disruption of the traceability chain. We would see, say, that a product was sold to one company but came to the port under a different exporter's name. And we don't know where those products were in between. Usually, it's a technical mistake. Usually, it's because the accounting systems are not fully integrated between the farmer, between the producer, and our IT systems. And if we come across such a technical issue, then we would alert the producer to this mistake, and we will insist that the producer addresses that deficiency.
В принципе, это основные моменты, возникающие при экспортной ветеринарной сертификации.
And this brings me to the end of my rather short presentation.
Бывало также, что когда мы проверяли груз, видели,
Oh,
что
by the way,
хватает
sometimes we would inspect a cargo
исследований, да,
and
требуется
we would see that
в стране,
some
направляется. И
lab results are missing,
мы отказывали в экспортной сертификации.
especially if these are the requirements not of Russia, but of the receiving country. And then we would reject such a shipment, but we would advise the importer, or the exporter, to perform the tests. This can be done in the port. The port has its own lab, and this is something that can save time to the exporter. Or the exporter may decide to do the lab test elsewhere. But in any case, this is one routine process that is mandatory for us. We would check on the lab results. Can you name any more typical mistakes, common mistakes? Oh well, no, not really. Nothing comes to the mind right now. But maybe if you asked me questions, maybe this will lead me to more ideas. All right, let's ask the audience then. Colleagues, do you have any questions? And Mr. Al-Rashidi, perhaps you have questions or you have any comments or any questions to Sergey, any questions to Russia?
Я единственно могу еще заострить внимание на том, что...
Ксения, кто-нибудь спрашивает? Нет? Хорошо, тогда, Андрей Сергеевич, вам слово еще раз.
Я хочу дополнительно
Yes,
отметить,
I was just thinking.
периодически на территории, в том числе Российской Федерации, да и любой вообще страны, могут возникать вспышки по различным заболеваниям.
I was thinking about
Африканская чума свиней, не дай бог.
outbursts of different animal diseases.
С которыми у нас присутствует оборот контрольных товаров, могут поводиться
And
на ВОЗ в связи с
if there is a pig plague or I don't
заболеванием.
know, something similar, then
Еще дополнительно
the countries would impose bans or limitations on the importation or exportation of products. We have a resource, we have a database, a tool that allows us to investigate the route that the products are taking, and we'll be able to see whether en route the product is going to pass. It doesn't necessarily originate from those countries, but it may be passing on the way through countries where there is an outbreak. And then we'll be able to change that route to make the products safer, or we'll be suggesting ways on how to minimize the risks for that product. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, are there any questions? Faisal, maybe you have questions or comments.
I guess, like as I described in the presentation, most mistakes sometimes with the certificate is about the details of the shipment, and the second part is the health attestation. And I guess in Kuwait we represent the federal service of veterinary and phytosanitary to accept the meat and meat products certificate from them. So most mistakes, as I described, like it has different from the production the products when it comes to the border. It's quite different with the health certificate, and sometimes the slaughter certificate, the slaughter dates are different from the labeling. So the producer have to make sure that the labeling of the product are the same as the certificate. This is like to make sure. About the health attestation, I guess it's clear with the Russian Federation, between us and the Russian Federation, they will lead the company how to put the health attestation. I guess this is what I have now, but if they have any questions.
Спасибо. Файзал... Хорошо. У нас есть вопрос. Я предлагаю, да, озвучиваю для всех, что предпринимает...
Okay, thank you very much, Faisal. There is a general question. What happens if some mistake cannot be corrected? What happens in Russia, for instance? Will the product be returned to sender if, say, a product arrives at the customs and then there is a mistake and this mistake cannot be fixed? What happens? Well, those things happen. That's one thing. And yes, there were cases in our practice when, say, the documents are not complete and not all of the lab results are present. Then we will ask the companies to perform additional lab tests. And if this is, if the lab tests, for instance, are negative, or if we have problems with tracing the product in our IT systems, well, it depends on the severity of the mistake. Really, well, definitely there is a non-acceptance act signed, and the shipment is not released by the customs. It is returned to sender, be it a domestic company who wants to export, be it an imported product. If the product are found to be unsafe, then there is a federal law number 129, and the products cannot be sometimes even returned to sender. They are incinerated or they are somehow disposed of. Faisal, what happens in Kuwait if on the border there is you stop a shipment and you can't release it, you can't accept it? What happens?
As my colleagues, I guess he described.
So, for instance, you receive a shipment from Russia and the shipment doesn't comply with the national standards. What happens to this cargo?
Yes, I think my colleagues, he described it clearly. Depend about the mistake with this shipment. If we can fix this standard, like if the standard of the labeling, we give chance the importers to change the label in Kuwait, okay, to make it comply with the GSO standard. If there is a mistake in the health certificate, we hold the shipment until the importers will contact the exporter to give us to send us the correction letter or the new health certificate. But I want to notice something, that the halal slaughter certificate must be original copy. So if any mistake happen, the importers will contact the exporter saying this certificate has mistake. So you have to clarify it, and this probably take time. So here, if you have electronic copy of health certificate and you give us the ability to verify them, this would make it easier. So some mistakes, we hold the shipment on the border, some of them, and this costs lots of money on the importer because the custom area has expensive renting area, I guess. But some mistakes, we take them to their store, and we have a letter from the importers that they do not do anything with this shipment until they fix the problem. But for example, for halal certificate, halal slaughtering certificate, no, we hold the shipment on the border. We don't allow it to go there until they fix the problem. but we have some mistakes. Like, for example, I'll give you example. Sometimes we see the label, it's all in English, and based on GSO 9 2013, the label must be in Arabic alongside with the other language. So here we give chance to the importer to put a new label under our supervision, and then we check the shipment. This kind of mistake, we can release them to their company store, the importer store, but not the market. They are not giving the final release. But mistake with halal slaughter certificate, this is a severe mistake. We hold the shipment on the border until they fix the mistake. But what I really want to make it clear is we welcome any contact before any shipment goes to Kuwait. You can contact us through our official channel that I bought. You can contact, or you can make the importer you agreed or contract with to come and show us the paper, and we do, or we give the approval that this shipment will not stop. All the paper is fine.
Большое спасибо.
Thank you so much.
Хочу добавить, в презентации Андрея Сергеевича я увидела
There is something else that I wanted to say. In the last presentation, Andrei spoke about one of the Russian egg producers, Sinyavinskaya, that ships eggs to different countries of the Gulf, but not to Kuwait for some reason. But this is a very well-known brand in Russia. They have big production. They are fully compliant with the best international practices. They have the permit to export to more than 50 countries of the world. And I think that this is at least one positive takeaway from this workshop. We should ask this St. Petersburg company to consider Kuwait as its next destination. I am very proud of my colleagues. A special lab was built in Kuwait for the transplant of embryos of sheep, very expensive sheep, and one ram can cost as much as $50,000. And my colleagues, our colleagues, I know, go to Kuwait and they work in this lab and they share experience. And there is this big program for embryo transplant. It's amazing. And there are so many other possibilities for cooperation between our countries. I think it's very promising. I want to thank everyone for their participation and contribution to this workshop. Thank you.